On a Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, Morant and Zach Edey, perhaps the next dynamic duo in the NBA. They got a workout in together. DeMichael Cole and I are going to talk about the potential of that and so much more. Our dynamic duo rides again. This is Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is a wild and wonderful Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies, and you are locked in on a great day because DeMichael Cole, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, and myself, Joe Mullinax, are back with you. The first time in a few episodes that we have a co-hosted edition of Locked On Grizzlies, and we are so grateful that you're with us wherever you're taking it in. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by the good folks over at FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. Check us out on YouTube as well. Make sure that you are with us each and every time an episode drops, whether it's DeMichael flying solo, as he will on the Friday episode, whether it's myself flying solo, as I have recently. DeMichael did a couple of solo shows before that, or in this busy time of year, for me at least, when we are able to make things work out and get together. It is so good to have the chance to talk Memphis Grizzlies basketball with my good buddy, DeMichael Cole. How have you been, friend? It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm good on this end. You know, everything's going well. I got a couple things I'm working on that'll become public knowledge a little bit later on. But yeah, busy time of the year for me with, I guess you can say, some non-Grizzly stuff. But on the Grizzly side, you know, this is kind of the toned down month, so things are going well.
Yeah, the Monday episode, you weren't able to be with me because the commercial appeal had you covering golf, right? I'm guessing you were wearing your bird dogs. We're not going to shout out bird dogs, but longtime listeners of Locked On Grizzlies will remember our wonderful bird dog reads. I'm excited to be back with you. You have a piece I'm excited to read. That was a good lead into maybe Friday's episode and other work that's coming out from you over at the commercial appeal. But you have an article that's come out recently about Morant and Zach Edey getting together for a workout. Morant posting videos on his social media showing him and the big man getting some work together. I thought between that and the fact that our mutual friend Parker Fleming, who did a great job writing about the Edey-Ja duo possibilities over at his Substack, that's a great place for us to start. Because for me, when you look at the potential of what Edey brings to the table for the Memphis Grizzlies this coming season, it starts with Morant. Maybe it starts with Morant when it comes to everybody that's on the roster, but it really does shine because Edey has been so kind of picked apart for how limited his game is. And yet I don't know that others, I think we've done a good job, partner, but I don't know that others have kind of focused in enough on how Morant thrived with Jonas Valanciunas and how Morant thrived with Steven Adams. Two traditional bigs setting screens, rebounding, being exactly what Morant needs them to be. Zach Edey seems to like to be the next in line to be a guy bigger than both of those guys that should be able to set a lot of screens, get a lot of rebounds, and create a lot of room, most importantly, for Morant to operate, because there are few players in the NBA, if any, that operate better in space with the ball in their hands coming off of a screen than Morant.
Yeah, and for one, it's good to see those two get out on the floor together down there at SMU in Dallas, working out together. Morant, Zach Edey, and it's the first of what I think is going to be kind of a long, intentional time period over the next month of Grizzlies players working out together. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, I think, with Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. in Dallas as well, working out together down there since Desmond Bane has a home down there. But I know Desmond Bane and a couple of the other guys, Santi Aldama, and a couple of players went to Killian Tilly's wedding recently. So congratulations to former Grizzlies, Killian Tilly.
Shout out to Killian Tilly. That's great.
Being married. But a couple of Grizzlies players were out to that recently. And I know Des said after they get back from the wedding and whatnot, they were going to try to, get some workout time with more of the players together. And, seeing Ja, kind of, expedite that process in a way is got to be encouraging for Grizzlies fans. And in particular, expedite that process with Zach Edey. Because if this season goes well, you're going to see a lot of Zach Edey, Ja Morant screens. And in the video that Josh shared online, that's what the first thing you see. You see Zach Edey setting him a screen, roll to the basket. Ja Morant throws him a lob, and he, puts it down. Like, that should become a familiar sighting over the course of time. But, look, I can't wait to see, both sides of this duo. And what I mean by that, well, you just touched on, like, what Ja will do for him. And we all can attest to that, like how Ja has made the game simpler for so many players on the Grizzlies roster. But Zach Edey is one of those guys who can make the game easier for Ja. We saw it in stretches with Steven Adams with his terrific screen setting. And I even wrote about it. Like, there's secret little play where Steven Adams would set the screen and then Ja would kind of snake his way back behind him. And Steven Adams would basically block both guys, the center and the guard. He was setting the screen from, and Ja would just get a wide open layup to the basket or an easy floater or whatever the case may be. I'm sure he's probably going to teach Zach Edey that. I'm curious to ask either one of them or both about that. Like, Steven Adams taught Ja that. Now I wonder if Ja's going to pass it down to Edey. Like, hey, we used to do this thing. It used to work a lot. But so seeing them two get together and have this intentional time to themselves, it wasn't like it's a big Grizzlies workout, and it was Ja and Zach Edey getting together. And I've said before, there are some built-in connections there. JT Thomas, one of Ja's trainers, used to work at IMG Academy. Trey Japer, another one of Ja's trainers and a Memphis native, was an assistant coach at IMG Academy when Zach Edey was there. So there are built-in connections with Ja's people and Zach Edey. So that kind of helped, expedite this process a little bit. And now you got Ja and Edey working out together. I think that duo can be a terrific one for the Grizzlies. They could do some terrific things, particularly in screen and roll, for how they both can make the game easier for the other player.
And I think it's important to point out that the Edey-Ja dynamic goes beyond just those two, right? Because as they add other pieces and other players into the mix, Desmond Bane out in the corner, Brandon Clark lob, whatever the case might be, there's so many different, wheels or spokes to the wheel, I should say, that can be added, but it starts with Edey and Ja, that initial action, right? Yeah. Lots of different pieces can be added into that, but if it's not a good screen and if Ja isn't comfortable finding that space that's going to be created by Edey's gigantic body, then we're missing the point. So that's really the most important piece of the puzzle. I'm curious, Michael, to see as they get together more, how well, a couple of years ago, the welcome to the dark kind of concept for Morant, working in the quiet and not being as big of a focus. It seems like maybe he's returning to that a little bit. He would post Instagram videos and other things of workouts back then, but we've talked about here on the show before, partner, the idea of him kind of being overlooked. It feels like we're kind of getting back to that Ja Morant of 2022 before he, became the next face of the NBA. He really was this guy just trying to prove himself. It's giving off those kinds of vibes, which is a good thing for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, the way I take it is, Ja, we've talked about it a little bit. I don't think we really dived into Mike Miller's comments that much, but when Mike Miller said, "How soon have they forgot?" When he was alluding to, people have pretty much forgotten, what Ja brings to the table in a way. That's kind of, the way that they're embracing, this next season. I think it's true to a certain degree. At the same time, he did have like the 12th highest selling jersey, in the NBA last season, and despite of everything that happened. But there is some truth to it when you think about the other players who've kind of been crowned as the next faces of the NBA, and Ja's name kind of slowly going down lower in that conversation. So I've been around Ja long enough to know that is motivation for him. He won't say it a lot publicly. There are a lot of things that Ja doesn't say publicly that I know that, he wears a little bit on his chest. Like, an example is like the Golden State stuff. Like, it's just another game. It's just another game. And then you find out, he's in the locker room and he tells guys, hey, look, this season, the MLK Day game, go win that game. We got to beat Golden State. Like, he's telling the guys to beat Golden State. We don't like them. So it's a little bit different, but he definitely wears these things on his shoulders. And I think, that's going to be the mantra this season. That's going to be the theme. It's a bounce back year, and it's a year where they're trying to prove themselves to being that team that they were a couple years ago.
And it depends on how well Zach Edey gets integrated into the currently established core, just how much of a bounce back season it will be. Let DeMichael and I know in the comments, how are you feeling about this Edey-Ja pairing? Lots of good vibes. Make sure you're checking out DeMichael's piece over the Commercial Appeal. And again, Parker Fleming of Substackaldus. I always mispronounce it.
Substackalitis.
Thank you, partner. Substackalitis. He does a great job over there. It's well worth the subscription. I'm a subscriber. Make sure you're checking it out. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we are going to look at some people that aren't overlooking the Memphis Grizzlies. Some national media love in recent days. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die whip alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Things like superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride each and every time, or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to make your car the MVP and bring home big wins. Keep your ride or die whip alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to United States customers. When we return here on Locked On Grizzlies, some love from the national media for Memphis heading into the season. Stick around. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, joined by my co-host, Michael Cole of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee. Again, it's nice to say joined by. The last few episodes, we've been ships in the night, passing by one another. A couple solo shows for you here, a couple solo shows for me there. Back together on this glorious edition of the podcast, and a chance to talk about, earlier in the show, we mentioned folks overlooking Ja Morant and the Memphis Grizzlies. There's two members of the media in particular, DeMichael, that are not doing that, singing the praises of Memphis ahead of what hopes to be, as we mentioned earlier in the show, a bounce-back year.
Yeah, Tim Bontemps, over at ESPN, basically said he's not overlooking the Grizzlies. This year he has them as a top 4 team. Kendrick Perkins, and if you follow the Kendrick Perkins Grizzlies thing, is funny to me. It's kind of hilarious. I mean,
it is very hit or miss, very up and down.
The 2021-2022 season, what we saw was Kendrick Perkins was as high on the Grizzlies. What was he saying, Joe? He's like, those young goons in Memphis, like he was
something like that, yeah.
The young goons in Memphis. He was hyping them up. And then the next year, he wasn't really buying it. It was the year where, the Dylan Brooks did all his talking and Ja said the fine in the West things. Then Kendrick Perkins was kind of slamming him a little bit to the point where, we saw, Desmond Bane laughing at him on Twitter and them kind of exchanging a couple words there. And, saw some things like that. But now it seems that Kendrick Perkins is back on the train. And he basically said that the Grizzlies are going to be a motivated team come in-season tournament. With that statement in particular, Joe, I think that's kind of going to be a popular idea. The Grizzlies, especially for what they're projected to be. Like now you're looking at it, they're like third, on a lot of the betting books for their to win their group, and some of them have them fourth because the Pelicans and the Grizzlies are flip-flopping. I think FanDuel has the Grizzlies third in particular. So,
and like we talked about on our last episode, that group for Memphis is the group of death, right? All of those teams are pretty good to great in that group for Memphis.
You got the last 3 Western Conference winners and the New Orleans Pelicans that just added DeJounte Murray. So you got Golden State 2022, Nuggets 2023, the Mavs 2024, and then you add the Pelicans, who are a very tough team as well in that group. So it's going to be very tough. But the idea that the Grizzlies can win that group, as I said in a recent episode, is out there because they don't got to go to Denver, which I think is a big one, in that group. And Golden State, in my opinion, is the weakest team in the group, and that's one of the road games you get. So if you're going to get a road game, rather it be probably the weakest team in the group, even though they're a really good team at home. But with all that being said, Kendrick Perkins comments, I was kind of surprised that he was the one saying it because I felt like when he fell off the Grizzlies chain, it was like, I'm not really going back. But he's appears to be back on the Grizzlies chain. Tim Bontemps, he's a guy I've met a couple times. Really respect, the work that he puts into, his thought process. He has a really good podcast, the Hoop Collective, him, Tim McMahon, all those guys at ESPN do over there. And Tim Bontemps is someone who, when he said that the Grizzlies, probably be a top 4 team in the West, it kind of gave me a little affirmation in what I already been thinking, because I've been saying it. But when the local beat writer says it, Joe, people are like, they go check my bio. They say, Memphis Grizzlies beat writer. Well, duh, of course he's gonna say it. But no, that's not my thing, Joe. It grinds my gears a little bit when people try to say that, because I'm going on a rant here, so I'm about to hit one of my jokes. I'm about to hit one of the Joe Mullinex I digresses in a second. But before I get to that point, it grinds my gears a little bit, Joe, because I'm not just saying this. I'm just not talking off the side of my neck, as Nelly used to say. I'm saying, and I'm coming with, reasoning behind these things. I think that the Grizzlies could be a top 4 team in the Western Conference because they have Ja Morant, one of the top point guards. They have one of the top 2 guards, and Desmond Bane, one of the top shooters. They have depth off the bench. They have 3 guys off the bench, really 4, who are capable of averaging double figures. It probably won't happen. You're not going to have 4 guys average double figures off the bench. But the fact that they have that kind of pop on a night-to-night basis gives me the thinking that not only can this team be good with their first 5, they can have a second 5 that can get the baton passed to them and hold the lead, and then they could close the game with the big dogs. So they are set up very well to be in that conversation. So I'm not surprised to see people saying these things. It was a little surprising to see Kendrick Perkins, of all people, saying that they could win the in-season tournament, though.
But I digress. You left that
out. But I digress. I'm gonna leave it there, Joe. I digress.
You used my "but I digress" for the episode. I think you're onto something, partner. Like I struggle with people not seeing how Memphis is essentially the same exact team. They just replaced Dylan Brooks with Vince Williams Jr. basically, and they replace Steven Adams with Zach Edey. The key cog pieces are still there. Ja Morant is healthy. You can't assume health for other teams and then not assume it for Memphis. That's not fair. And I do think that they have the talent to be exactly what you said they could be, a top 4 team of the Western Conference. Now, there's also a lot of ways that it could derail. It's always risky when you count on a rookie as much as Memphis figures to count on Edey and depend on him for productivity. But they are set up in ways that if Edey doesn't have the success you hope he can have, they have Brandon Clark, right? They have guys in ways, there's plan Bs, plan Cs. They have the flexibility to make a trade if they need to. This is a team that is aligned to do whatever it has to do, hopefully to be competitive, but in a variety of different directions. They're well run by Zach Kleiman. They're well coached by Taylor Jenkins. They believe in these guys. They've been together a while, this core. I struggle with seeing reasons not to have Memphis as a top contender in the Western Conference. So Tim Bontemps and Kendrick Perkins, shout out to you guys for saying it out loud. I think that if you're out there saying that Memphis is going to be a play-in or worse team, that tells me that you haven't been paying much attention to the Memphis Grizzlies the last couple of years beyond the bad year they just had. And understandably so. We've talked about Memphis as a small market, all those sorts of things. The Grizzlies are going to be in that conversation, to be sure. Let DeMichael and I know how you're feeling in the comments. Do you agree with DeMichael's tangent, his grinding of gears, that, it's coming from a place of logic? I agree with DeMichael. Let us know if you're on the same page as us. When we come back here on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, we'll finish up this episode. 2K ratings are slowly but surely trickling out. DeMichael will talk more about those on the Friday edition of the show. But we have some things that grind my gears that I'll do my best to. We already used I digress, so I can't. We
used that one for the episode. Yep.
Yeah, we can't do it again. But I'll try to think of another way to articulate my frustration with the makers of NBA 2K here in a little bit. I want to remind you, after this episode's over, right, we have the first listen of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you for making DeMichael and I a part of your NBA and Memphis Grizzlies content consumption. But there's Locked On NBA that you can check out next, which is an amazing, amazing show. They do a great job covering the NBA from all angles each and every time an episode drops. Analysis, news, literally up and down, left and right across the association. Locked On NBA is the place for you. So subscribe, like, comment, rate, review wherever you get podcasts. Make Locked On NBA your second listen today. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Big fan of FanDuel. We talk about FanDuel a lot. DeMichael talked about them just a moment ago. They are America's #1 sportsbook, and that's one of the main reasons we talk about them so much. But today we have something a little bit different for you. It's an exciting time in our partnership with FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Yes, we're talking about the National Football League, NFL, the most popular sport in the United States, carried by YouTube. Each and every game, every Sunday, you can get a 3-week access trial to it through a $5 bet with FanDuel. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you will need to do so is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel literally at any time. Football season is upon us. It's an exciting time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and be in a position to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. DeMichael, we'll get out of here on this, and you're a big gamer. When I'm not super busy with football season, I'd like to play video games myself. Mm-hmm. And this is the time of year where we start to get the breakdowns of ratings for NBA 2K. I know you're going to go more in depth with this in the Friday episode, so I won't go too deep in the weeds. But there's one stat that really drove me nuts, or one rating, I should say. Yeah. And maybe there's one that drove you nuts. Maybe we agree on the one that makes no sense. However we want this episode to end, it's August. We can do whatever we want. The top 5 3-point shooters in the NBA were released, and names like Steph Curry were on there, right? Because, of course, Steph Curry should be on there. But the 5 names, and you probably have them in front of you, all I know is, partner, 2 names were extremely conspicuous by their absence.
You want me to say the 5?
Yeah, I'm going to do my best to not get angry, but go ahead.
All right, if you're watching on YouTube, just do not watch Joe Mullenex's face.
I'm going to turn into the Hulk. I'm going to turn green as he does this.
And number 1 is Steph Curry,
which I'm not going to complain about at all.
Oh, number 2, it's going to be funny. Number 2 is Grayson Allen. Number 3 is Kevin Durant.
Okay.
Number 4 is Klay Thompson.
No, Klay Thompson in 2017, maybe.
Number 5 is near and dear to your heart, so I don't know how you're going to react to this one, but Mike Conley is number 5.
Oh, I love Mike Conley. I love Mike. Everybody that has followed my career going back to the beginnings of Grizzly Bear Blues in 2013, love Mike Conley. That is ridiculous. No Desmond Bane. No Luke Kennard.
Nope.
Never mind that Luke Kennard is one of the top 10 3-point shooters in the history of the NBA, and I can very easily make that statistical
led the
argument.
league 2 out of the last 3 seasons.
Not even in the top 5 for 3-point shooting. That is crazy to me. Grayson Allen, I don't know who he knows at 2K. The guy that does the ratings, what's his name? Ronnie or something like that?
Yeah, Ronnie 2K.
Is he a Duke graduate or something like that? Is he connected to the Dukies in some way? Because that's the only way this makes sense to me, to Michael.
Look, all I know is Grayson Allen did have a great shooting year. Had a wonderful shooting year with the Suns. But I don't know if Desmond Bane has a great shooting year every year. And if we're going off shot difficulty, it goes into the whole, who do you take, Desmond Bane, Luke Kennard? And when we talk about these two, as we have in the past, the difference in their 3-point shooting profiles, Luke Kennard, spot up, dead eye, when he shoots, I'm expecting it to go in every time. But the difference between Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard is Desmond Bane's going to grab that ball in transition. He's going to pull up. He's going to come straight off that screen, dribbling the basketball. He has the snatch back. He has the flyby that everyone loves. Desmond Bane has the step back. He has so many ways that he gets to his 3-pointer and more difficult 3-pointers. I'm kind of puzzled that he's not in top 5 because, quite frankly, we watched Minnesota a lot and we watched Mike Conley a lot. Mike Conley and he's closer to Luke Kennard style than Desmond Bane as a 3-point shooter, even though I still would have had Luke Kennard probably higher in this case. But Desmond Bane, pretty much even more than Klay Thompson. If you look at Conley, Klay Thompson, and Grayson Allen, Kevin Durant, he's easy money sniper. A lot of his shots just look easy because of his height and, just how fluid he plays the game of basketball. Steph Curry, though, that's the one guy that I can say, okay, he's the one that takes more difficult three-point shots than Desmond Bane. But I don't know if there's anyone else in the top 5 that takes more difficult. Not saying Desmond Bane's more accurate than those guys, but the fact that Desmond Bane consistently churns out 40+% from three-point range type seasons, and he's getting it on volume. Like, he's taking 6-7 3-point shots and he's making 3 to 4 of them. And I mean, he did it this past season, with everyone knowing he's the guy, and he still threw up 25, 5-5 pretty much.
Yeah. Well, I know you'll talk more about the ratings on Friday. His overall rating is absurd too, for the exact reason that you just outlined. But the 3-point shooting, you're exactly right. And Grayson Allen plays next to Kevin Durant. He plays next to Devin Booker. The third best offensive player on that team is Bradley Beal, who on 90% of the teams in the NBA, he'd be the best offensive player. So he's the fourth option. You want to talk about carefully cultivated, created shots for him. It's extremely simple for him to be open in that offense. Mm-hmm. As a guy that thought Grayson got a bad rep in Memphis, I think that's just crazy. I thought it was legitimately insane that Desmond Bane and Luke Kennard were not in the top 5 of that list. I would easily take, especially Mike Conley. If you want to replace Conley with Bane, I certainly would agree with that. Let DeMichael and I know what you guys think. Are we out of bounds on this? Are we going way too far and thinking that both Kennard and Bane should be in front of some of these guys, especially Conley? I know Mike had a great season. He's a seamless fit with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm genuinely happy for Mike, right? If it wasn't for Ja Morant and Memphis moving up to the number 2 pick in this draft, there's an outside chance Mike Conley's still on this team, right? It just didn't make sense once Ja Morant was on the way to keep Mike Conley around. So I'm very much a Mike Conley guy, but I just really kind of lean towards the 3-point shooting of Kennard and especially Bane. I'm with you, being where the focus should have been. Thank you guys so much for being with us on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is tremendously appreciated. Always fun to be able to talk to DeMichael Cole about Memphis Grizzlies basketball. We'll try to do it again next week, but for this week, DeMichael will close out the week solo on Friday. And again, I know you've got some stuff in the works that you can't necessarily talk about as much right now, partner. But between that and NBA QK, there's a lot of stuff for our wonderful everydayers to check out on the Friday show.
Yeah, the 2K ratings, the overall ratings will continue to fall in. Like you mentioned it, but Desmond Bane, we'll talk more about it on that show. He's 68th in the player rankings.
Ridiculous.
On 2K. Now, and Ja and Jaren have not been listed yet, so they're going to be somewhere in the top 50. But where in the top 50 is kind of a relevant question. So we'll see where those two land. And then there are some other things that are going on as well. The Grizzlies will be practicing out in Nashville. We talked about that a little bit. But then, we saw that Ja and Zach Edey got together. Expect more Grizzlies players now to get together going forward too.
It's the season for workout videos put to snare drum music and all sorts of other stuff. It's that time of year for players to start getting into the groove slowly but surely. Training camp isn't for another month or so. But slowly but surely players getting back into the basketball mindset after nice vacations. So make sure you're checking out that episode with DeMichael on Friday. He and I hopefully will be back together for the Monday episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're liking, commenting, rating, reviewing, subscribing wherever you get your podcasts, over on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, literally anywhere you get a podcast. Take DeMichael and I with you wherever you go. Be an everydayer each and every time that an episode drops. Make sure that you're checking out Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA for your second listen or your second watch today. And again, make sure you're back here on Friday to hang out with DeMichael and closing out the week talking Memphis Grizzlies basketball. For DeMichael, I'm Joe. Stay locked in. Make sure that you are making us a part of your NBA content consumption each and every day, each and every episode. Until next time, we'll catch you later.